Hello and welcome back to the Winter Virtual Show. My name is Paul Davis.
And I'm Joe Longbone. Hello.
And thank you very much for tuning in live. Let us know that you're watching live as well. Please say hello in the comments. It's always lovely to see your comments through live and join in on the conversation as well. So yes, today is Sunday and we're here again. We have promised 9 days straight. Yeah, third day
already. And we're one third of the way through.
Yeah. It feels like it's going quick.
It is.
Like already.
We've had 5 sessions. This is our 6th
5 sessions.
Session.
Yeah.
Wow. It's going well.
So we had a wonderful day yesterday.
We did.
So
Mike Inkley and Angela Nicholson.
Yeah, Angela was brilliant. I mean, we really got into it and had a lovely conversation there. So to the point where I think that potentially we forgot that we were streaming live.
It was just like a chat about gear.
Yeah, it's like a real conversation in the end there. Yeah, so that was absolutely lovely. Really so, and if you want to rewatch any of the videos that we've done over the past couple of days, you can go to our website, which is cambrianphoto.co.uk. Click on the guest speakers and see all the videos that we've posted in the past. If you're watching this live, you can also see all the upcoming videos as well, and click on the reminder video so you'll be notified of when we actually go live, so you don't miss out on the fun.
Yeah. Oh, we've got some comments coming through. So, hi, Trish. Hope you're both well. Looking forward to the session. Yes. Well, I'm well. Are you well, Paul?
I'm very well. I'm always
Good.
well.
Good. And David Metcalf says, hello, guys. It's becoming a regular thing. Double time. Yeah. And then Steve says, awesome so far. Good week of presentations ahead. It is. It's going to be a great week ahead. And we're glad that you're enjoying it so far. It makes all of the video calls and the emails worth it, doesn't it, Paul?
It certainly does. It certainly does. Yeah, it has required a lot of prep.
Tired of links.
There's been links sent around left, right, and centre, I have to say. Yeah. And keeping an eye on who I'm sending stuff to. So I think I've called somebody the wrong name at some point. So yeah.
Well, just remember we're speaking to David.
Oh yeah, well no, David I can remember, and almost like we nearly had to change our intro for a second then as well.
We did, because we've got not only a photographic extravaganza, we've got a musical extravaganza lined up for you, ladies and gentlemen. We didn't know that David had some hidden talents and an addiction.
And I'm wondering if we could peer pressure him in, like when we invite him onto the screen, whether he can.
He's got to do an intro of the banjo. Yeah, that'd be great. Right, should we get to it then?
I think so. Yeah.
All right, I'll pop him up. Here we go.
Here we go.
Hello, David.
Hello, David.
How did I get into doing this? It's great.
I don't know. I'm loving it. Amazing.
Brilliant.
You've just raised the bar for introductions for our speakers for all time now. We're going to have to tell them in the introduction when we meet up with them and say, well, we had a guy come on, David, and he played banjo for his introduction. So what are you going to bring?
Exactly, yeah. This is bar-raising stuff. I'll just let everybody know, this is a 110-year-old banjo that I bought about 2 months ago. I've been playing guitar for about 30 years. But this is, it looks like an old, as we were saying a minute ago, it looks like an old Victorian bed warmer. which is really great, and it's going to be around a lot longer than I am probably as well. But it's such a lovely thing. It's really great, and only an entry-level banjo as well. But 2 months I've been at it so far, and I'm absolutely obsessed. I am.
You sound great.
Good.
I'm going to just put it over there so I don't step off my chair and stand on it.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah,
we've got some comments saying love it, Yahoo, clapping hands. So the people love it. The people love it.
Great stuff.
Excellent.
I'll place them on the way out as well. I'll do an outro.
Yeah, that's going to be perfect.
Oh, that'll be great.
And we'll get a new Photography Out Loud theme out of David at this rate.
Yeah, definitely.
So right, we'll leave you to it then, David, and we'll catch up with you at the end.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
And just to let me know, just to let you know, any mention of equipment, things like that, I'll happily mention things. So if you want to add anything into the talk as well, then please do. But the main thing is, like I said, we'll have a fun, exciting hour when I'll give everybody as much information as I can about how to improve their night photography and how to really push things forward certainly for over the next few months in particular as well. So. Yes, stay tuned. We'll have some fun.
Great.
That's fantastic.
Right. We'll
like David said, if there's any questions, just pop them into the comments, and we'll get some at the end. That's brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Over to you, David.
Cheers.
Well, that was an interesting start. I haven't done one of those before. Well, it's quite funny actually, because this all began because I mentioned the fact that it was on Tuesday I did a talk for the RAC, which is actually the Royal Automobile Club. They have a photographic club inside the business, and I had my MacBook sat up on the top here. It was completely flat. And at 7:25, 5 minutes before, after trying everything possible, I joined the talk via Zoom using my mobile and said, look, I can't get this laptop to boot back up. So it was just hilarious. So in the end, what happened was I said, well, we're going to have to reconvene at 8. And they said, fine, that's okay. And at 7:45, my laptop just sprung into life. And I said, well, what can we do now? And I said, well, should I go and get my banjo? And the next thing you know, I'm playing banjo. I played about 3 songs, I think, for everybody in the end, which was really fun. And they thought this whole thing was totally hilarious. So it seems like I'm going to have to start all of my photography talks with a bit of live music. And why not, I suppose, is the answer as well. Why not? Let's get used to doing this. It's great fun. Anyway, thank you for joining me on this fabulous Sunday afternoon. If you can let me know any questions you get as I'm doing this talk, this inspirational talk about astrophotography, then by all means, let me know. I'm also going to, I like to chop and change things as well. So we're going to, we've decided that what we're going to do as well is we're going to include some stuff about architecture. So we're going to do a sort of half and half, one architecture, one astro. And I'm going to show all sorts of different bits of work that I've been doing of late. Now, I've also been shooting this rather lovely beast, which is currently, I'd say, a loaned Canon R5. And before I had this one with a 51.2 lens on it, as it happens, and I've got a 24-105 downstairs as well. I also use the Canon R6. Now, the R6 was my first encounter with these R series cameras. And I was in central London, wandering around, taking all sorts of images. I would say a lot of brutalist architecture, heavy concrete and monolithic stuff, spiral staircases and all sorts of things. So I've got a right mix of stuff to show you this afternoon that will inspire you, hopefully, to head on out. I've just seen down here, there's somebody saying, Nick Pitts Drake says, David is responsible for getting me a tilt shift lens following a Canon day out at Padley Gorge. Well, nice to know that you're enjoying your tilt shift lens, Nigel, sorry. How fantastic. That's absolutely amazing lens. In fact, I used a tilt shift for such a long time. I think it was probably I had mine in 2008, but by 2012-13, I'd used it so much that I'd actually worn out the shifting mechanism on the rear of the lens, and I had to get the whole thing replaced because I'd pick the lens up and the whole mechanism would just drop like this. It was a bit of a disaster. So anyway, I've got a great array of different images to show you today. And the thing I want to really get across to you guys for the first part of this is to start thinking about the equipment that you've got and how to approach the subject with what you have. It's very easy in this environment to start recommending all this wonderful, very exotic glass and and wonderful cameras, but at the same time, I want to take you right back to the start of my images, and I'm going to, like I said, I like to chop and change around with all of this, so I'm going to do all sorts of different bits. And the fact is that many years ago, when I first began my photography, I started with a 5D Mark I. Now, I'd like to say this is kind of vintage. This is vintage moonlight photography, and it all began probably back in about 2006 when I first went out on Dartmoor with my 5D Mark I. I had a 17-40 lens as well, and I went out to the back of Hound Tor, rather nervously locked my car and wandered out into the black to go and take some photographs, because I'd seen some inspirational work on an agency website that I was working for at the time, an agency that no longer exists now, called Photo Library. And I'd seen somebody had gone and done something similar, so I was inspired to go and try the same. So I took my 5D Mark I 17-40 lens on my tripod and went out with a big idea that maybe I could get this to work. Now, if I can do this in 2000 I think it was 2007, and if I can do this in 2007, everything you have in your camera bag is going to be better than anything I had 13 years ago. And this is a really important point with all of this. I firmly believe that 75% of all photography is the idea. It's the execution of an idea, and it's not easy, and it certainly isn't comfortable to think to yourself, right, I'm going to drive 20 minutes. I live near Dartmoor, I'm 20 minutes away, and I'm going to go up onto Dartmoor on my own, and I'm going to go wander around a load of tours in the dark and take photographs and hope that it all comes out. It's a pretty concerning thing, because not only is it a dark, weird environment, but also from the perspective that you don't know what you're going to get. And this was literally one of the first moonlight shots that I ever took. And I remember when I looked at the back of the camera screen, my jaw literally hit the floor. I had no idea that I would be able to see what I could see in this picture. Stars, clouds, what looks like sunrise going on in the bottom right corner. But there was also shadows, and there was an interesting composition. Everything sort of just came together, and I was really stunned by what had happened that night. I remember going and posting these images as well online and talking online to people. You remember the good old days, you may do personally, where basically you would have posted images on photography forums. There was two in particular I used to go to. One was called Naturescapes and the other one was called naturephotographers.net. And both of them were environments where if you posted work, rather than just get wow, love it, you nailed it, smiley faces, clapped hands, etc., you would get advice. People would quite readily say, but you have color casts. And I'd say, oh, blimey, have I? What's going on? And you would receive help on a regular basis. It wasn't just this, adoring sort of fan-based posting that goes on these days, which is, unfortunately not massively helpful to the amateur and to the beginner pushing forwards. So it was great because I got some information and I got some help. I also thought to myself at the time, I remember saying to myself, well, maybe I'll actually be able to sort of gain a bit of notoriety for photographing at night. But most people who saw these pictures would just be like, I don't get it. It's kind of blue skies with stars. What's that all about? And again, this is really vitally important for anybody who's trying to do something slightly different. Is don't expect to be lifted onto the shoulders of the people in your village or town or your camera club and be carried around like a hero. The fact is that for most of the time, when you're trying to experiment with things and you're making mistakes and you're also producing work that is questionable or different in that sense, what tends to happen is that you are going to walk a rather lonely path, and the path of the creative person actually can be, in a general way, very, quite lonely in that sense. But fear not, because what you're doing is you're innovating, and this is vital to progression as a photographer, and something that I've been doing since those years. So began, I think it was something like 12 consecutive full moons, going out every run up to full moon, going out with a friend of mine, good friend of mine called Mark Lakeman, wandering around on Dartmoor, having fun, doing all sorts of stuff. It was really, really good, and the adventures got crazier, and the walking got even longer. I remember doing at least 4 to 5 miles at night on Dartmoor, going between different viewpoints or vistas that I wanted to try for night photography. This is actually a bluebell woodland on Dartmoor called Holwell Lawn. And this is one of the first times I actually managed to stick a constellation, as you can see there, over the top of this tree. Now, this tree is a lovely, beautiful white hawthorn in spring, and underneath all that grass you see there is actually made up of bluebells that have gone over. And this was taken in July. So getting a constellation over the top of something suddenly made me realize, wow, this is an additional thing I can add into my pictures. So I started thinking about the constellations you could add in, and of course, there's only a couple that even work, and that's the Great Bear you can see here, the Plough as it's also affectionately known, but also Orion is another really, really good one as well. And Orion's very obvious in the winter sky in particular, so you could use this for adding an element into your photographs. Now, I remember at the time as well, I couldn't afford very much equipment, and this is also really important, is the fact that you just have to work with what you've got. And I went from shooting with a Canon 17-40, and I went out and shot with all sorts of alternative lenses. In other words, I adapted lenses over to work on my Canon camera because I couldn't afford to go and buy expensive L series glass. So I started trawling around for all sorts of things, like really old bits of kit as well, like Olympus and Nikon and Contacts, which you buy these little adapters and stick them on the front, and that was the only way I could go about this. But of course, as the enthusiasm goes so high with these things, you start to realize this is becoming a major part of my work, and that's when I started to really invest in some really high quality glass. Now you can see here, looking at this is Coomstone Tor. But looking at Coomstone Tor on Dartmoor, you can see above that is the constellation of Orion. But if you look very carefully, if you're looking at this as a big enough image, you'll be able to see that there's star trails. And this brings on one of the first important points about my experiments. The first thing was I was doing a lot of things at 30 seconds. So in other words, a very long shutter speed. And this would actually, depending on the lens I was using, create quite significant star trails. So the star trails would start to ruin the shape of the constellation. But the biggest problem back in those days was fighting ISO. In other words, how far could you push the camera? Now, every camera that you own right now can probably easily do 1600 ISO, whether it's a 4/3, an APS-C, or a full frame. Even for the last 5 to 10 years. The fact is, when I was shooting with a 5D Mark I, I could push it no further than 400 ISO. A 640 would be an absolute miracle if I could get that to work. And I'm using a 1DS Mark III to do this, which again, right back at the beginning, was a great camera. It could give me a very clean ISO 800, and it gave me a pretty horrible ISO 1600. So the progression was heading forward. So ISO 800 was enough to go out in moonlight. But star trails were a problem. So in other words, what I'm going to do as we go through these as well is I'm going to not only talk to you about settings, but I'm also going to talk to you about when things work and don't work. Now you're probably wondering, what on earth is this? This is something called the Giant's Chair that used to be on Dartmoor. It's fantastic. And the Giant's Chair itself was a huge 7-meter high chair that is an art installation on a hillside. Now, this is one of the questionable ones because you're looking at this and thinking, hang on a minute, there's cloud movement, it looks like daytime, and if I look in the top left corner, you can just about pick out there's a whole load of stars there. This is when moonlight photography doesn't work. And also you have to be aware of the moon rising and setting at different times will create more flattering lighting angles. And I'll come back to that with some other examples as we go through, when I take you on a bit of a journey around places like Namibia and stuff like that. So this image sort of didn't work in that sense. And I remember thinking at the time, I thought this was exceptionally good, and loads of people just thought it was, I just put a stacked load of filters on. I remember in 2008, there was no 10-stop neutral density, or a 10-stop neutral density or similar was only used for people wanting to take photographs in furnaces or something really absurd like that, where there was this incredibly burning, very bright light, and you would do so to bring the brightness down to a conceivable, reasonable level. And suddenly, after I screwed one on for a review I did for a magazine, and said, look, you can do all these fun things at the coast where you can get long exposures in the daytime. Apparently, I was told 2 weeks later that they sold so many of them that they couldn't manufacture them fast enough. So I like to think I'm responsible for the whole 10-stop ND thing. I don't think I am anyway, but it was that started it. Anyway, so you can see here, questionable results in that sense. Right, now let me take you to modern day, and I want to take you to this one. And I was so pleased to see this comet. Were you not pleased to see this comet? I really was. And I remember like going online at the time and seeing the amount of people who were just like, oh no, not another comet picture on social media, etc. And I just kept thinking to myself at the time, are you that joyless? Are you really that joyless that you could go out in the night sky and you can see this celestial object that's not coming back for 6,500 years or something ridiculous, that's as long as your thumb when you hold it up? It was huge like this, and you could see a beautiful sort of curve of the cosmic dust coming off it. And I just kept thinking to myself at the time, when people were trashing that, like, just don't you like sunsets either, or anything that's kind of quite beautiful in that sense? Anyway, this is David Clapp 2020, and this is taken using an astronomical tracking mount. Now, this is a Canon 100-400. It's with a 5D Mark IV. And what I've gone and done is I've set up a tracking mount that rotates the camera with the movement of the Earth. I've then used the lens at about, I think it was about 400 millimeters. It was right at the long end. I've zoomed in right onto the comet, and what I've done is I've taken 10 astro-tracked images as the comet's been moving very slowly across the sky, obviously with the stars as it's rotating, and then I've assembled them all by putting them into software. Now, I've used a piece of software called Deep Sky Stacker, which is free. It's for PC only. And what this allows you to do is compound 10 pictures. So you take 10 exposures, and then what you do is by putting them all together, you can not only pull detail out that you can't see, but it also subtracts the noise. So you can use higher ISOs like 3200 or higher to be able to take these pictures and pull out all of this wonderful detail. What really blew me away by this when I first began to process this was that, and I'll just see if I can find the comet itself. The comet was green. I mean, how remarkable is that you could pull something out that was green out of the picture? I was so blown away by this. Now, it's very tricky to take photographs with long lenses of tiny objects in the night sky, and you have to set these things up extremely accurately. And when you start moving into very long focal lengths, you need to have computer guiding to make sure that all this works. So let me just start by explaining the following. When you're headed down the astrophotography route, you're going to go one of two ways. You're either going to be a landscape photographer who includes night sky in their images, or you're going to start going down the nerd hole, the rabbit hole of astrophotography, starting to want to put a telescope on the back of a lens, or sorry, a camera on the back of a telescope. Or if you're going to use lenses, for example, you're going to require very fast, very expensive glass to be able to do this, which is often very heavy, which is why you need big tripods. And this is why people have back sheds and things like that filled with equipment for their astrophotography in that sense. Anyway, but if we go to this one, next one, you can see here's just an image that was taken with the 5D Mark IV. I think it was again with a 24-70 lens. a favored night photography lens of mine. I use the 24-70 f2.8 Mark II as my primary night photography lens. And the reason why is because it's fantastic throughout the entire range and is sharp pretty much corner to corner, bar a very small amount in the top and bottom corners at 2.8. It's also got quite a generous amount of depth of field available as well, and I find that this is exceptional for night photography. And you can see here, not only have we got the comet again, we got the Great Bear in, and just look at the tail. Can you see the tail going right? It went right through the Great Bear. It was quite amazing, headed right through the picture. Now this is also light painted, and this is another part of what I'm doing. I'm often light painting subjects, and I'm doing so because it just creates far greater quality to the pictures. You can reduce all of the very dark, very black shadows and pull that out. Am I using anything in specific to do this? Yes, I'm using a Petzl head torch that I bought in Death Valley about 10 years ago. There's nothing remarkable. It's not very powerful. That's also to the advantage. And inside the tin mine that you can see here, which I photographed in Cornwall, is something called a Lume Cube, and that's a little tiny light that you can control with a phone app, and you can also get varying degrees of brightness from it, and just placed it inside, and that illuminated the inside of the mine itself. The ground is also light painted, and over the space of, it was a 28mm 3200 ISO shutter speed for 20 seconds. I've run off to the left hand side and I've light painted the whole of the scene here. I'm just off frame here to the left hand side, light painting the front of the mine, and then literally ran down the grass bank and light painted all of the grass bank as well, all from the left hand side to give it that very necessary dimension. So now you can see that it's got a very three-dimensional shape to the tin mine itself. So I'll just, the last one from the from this approach. This is a Milky Way shot, and what I've gone and done here is I've taken a Milky Way separately from a tin mine shot down in Levant in Cornwall, and I've light painted all the foreground. I've light painted some of the building, but I have to also attribute a lighthouse, which is Pendine Lighthouse, just north of this in the tip of Land's End, for light painting part of the tower, which I couldn't really do very effectively. So lighthouses can come in useful for light painting, and who'd have ever thought I'd say that? And what I've done is I've taken an astro tracked image of the Milky Way behind. In other words, I've done my 10 compositions of it pointed at the sky, and then what I've done is I've composited the two together to give you the feeling that what you're looking at there is as it comes. But actually, what I've also done, because I tried to play around with the Milky Way here, I tried to make the Milky Way larger by using a 24mm focal length for the tower and the grass, and then doing a 50mm focal length for the Milky Way to see if I could sort of make this huge Milky Way to sit in the background, which kind of works. I'm quite happy with it, but at the same time, I don't think it was as good as the original, which I haven't got to show you actually, that I put together. I think that there's something about when you do these sort of composites that sometimes just don't look very good. So what I want to do is, let me just show you, if I take you to some St. Michael's Mount ones done with the same approach. So in other words, a tracked sky, and then I think I've done 10 times 1 minute exposures with the 5D Mark IV and 24-70 again. And then what I've done is I've done 1 minute exposure with the tracker switched off. Because remember, right, let's think about this. If we're tracking the sky and the camera's moving left to right throughout the exposures, all the stars are sharp, but St. Michael's Mount there in Cornwall is just going to all just become a smudgy mess. So you need to actually create the sky images, and it'll make a real disaster of St. Michael's Mount itself, and then stick that into a 1 minute exposure of St. Michael's Mount down here. And that then creates the greatest effect I could possibly get from this. And let me also explain to you a magical time, which was due to lockdown, and lockdown had come to an end by that point when I'd gone down there it was in the beginning of July. None of the restaurants that are normally sitting on the front in St. Michael's, outside St. Michael's Mount, were actually operational. So normally they have these sort of like yellowy floodlights that they point at the scene in front. and this creates a very light yellowy sort of glow to St Michael's Mount. And because none of these restaurants were open, all the lights were turned off. So I got this fabulous opportunity to get all this wonderful side lighting coming in across St Michael's there, and to be able to do it with a tracked image. So this is the same focal length for the ground, same focal length for the sky, and that's the effect that you're after. It really, really is exceptionally good. So now you might not think, and you might be thinking, hang on a minute, what is this tracker that he keeps talking about? Let me just show you. It's this, and this is a simple tracker. It's very easy to understand, but what we've got here is we've got a little telescope at the top for aligning the tracker with Polaris, the North Star. And then what we've got down here is we've got a plate that we screw our ball head onto, or whatever head we like. And this plate will move around and rotate very slowly. And as it goes, it will track the night sky. You find out where you are on Earth using longitude. In other words, you just use an app and it will tell you exactly what your longitude is. And you set it on this scale that you can see in the bottom there. And that means that then as you turn the track around, oh, there's Polaris. You just do some fine tuning and you're ready to go. Switch the tracker on and you can keep it revolving with the night sky. How much do these things cost? Entry level ones about $250, $275, something like that. I don't think they even make this model anymore, but this is one made by Ioptron, for example. But it's great because you can just stick it in your bag with all your other stuff and use it when necessary. So you can just switch the tracker on for the sky, switch it off, and then do another shot for your landscape. So really great fun to start to be able to think about the including in a really high quality astro element into your photographs. Let me take you to some American deserts. Now that's always really nice. Now these are not astro tracked, these are just straight images, and I wanted to sort of explain to you a really important point, which is when you go to an environment like this, and this is a radio telescope station in California, everything that you've done in a local environment, in other words, nervously locking your car door and running around on Dartmoor, starts to come together. In other words, all the light painting that you've done, the experience of moving head torches around and illuminating scenes, all your knowledge about how to photograph and get the very highest quality result you can from all of this starts to come together. And I still, to this very day, do a lot of work in my local environment so I can try out equipment, so I can try out new techniques, so I can play around with things, because I know that if I travel to the other corner of the world, so to speak, in this instance, right the way over to California, the fact is that there's nothing worse than going and making a whole load of terrible mistakes, isn't there? And that in itself is something that I can't bear, is going away, not having the knowledge, and then realizing I've made lots of mistakes. This is taken, believe it or not, using a 24mm TSE lens. This is actually a tilt shift lens that took this picture. Now, why did I not choose something like the 2470 2.8 I was going to mention before? Because I didn't own it at the time. And the other reason is why didn't I have a 24mm f1.4, something like that you think would be, again, very useful for a night sky approach? And the answer is because I couldn't actually afford it at the time, not for a specific one single composition. So I used what I had, and I used an architecture lens. And why do I use an architecture lens for this? Why is the architecture lens good for night photography? Let me explain. Now, unless you understand the principles of architectural photography lenses, shifting, tilting, things like that, it can be a little bit confusing, but let me just narrow this down. Imagine this is your image circle that's created by the lens, and it's projecting a circular image, not a rectangular image, but a circular image into the space where your sensor sits. Now, that circular image is exactly the width of your sensor on the diagonal, should we say. And it will be 36 by 24mm for a full frame. Now, imagine if you were shooting a crop sensor, you're only using a smaller part of it, 24 by 18, in the very middle of that circle. So it leaves you all this excess going all the way around the outside. Now let's go back to the full frame sensor. Now stick a tilt shift lens on, and what happens is that the lens itself has a much larger image circle, about this big. So it means that the full frame sensor is only using the very center of the frame. Now, lens design in general, wide angle lenses, if you take the fact that it's taking light coming from different angles and turning it through the lens like that so it fits the sensor. Well, in this instance, there's so much excess going around the outside of the image circle that in the very, very middle is the sharpest part of the lens when the lens is wide open. So in other words, take any lens, it doesn't matter. Let's take a 50mm lens. If you just take a 50mm lens and shoot it wide open, the very center of the lens is coming, all the light's coming straight at you. It doesn't have to bend or get turned by any of the optical elements inside the lens. The stuff at the sides has to get turned and loses contrast, and that's why you end up with a slightly softer, not so sharp image. All modern lenses these days are fantastic in that sense, but the very center of an image is really sharp. So if you only use the very center of a tilt shift lens, then you can take remarkable night sky images. And all these were done with a 24mm tilt shift, not for shifting, not to try and keep all those verticals straight, but actually because of the fact being that it was by far the best quality lens that I was using wide open. It's an f3.5. It's only a third of a stop, if you like, darker than an f2.8 lens, which you could attribute as being a very high quality night photography lens. So there we go again. If you own a tilt shift lens, you've already got a 24mm prime that you can go out and experiment with and use to take marvelous photographs of the night sky. I blagged my way in here. I drove past a sign that said absolutely no unauthorized personnel admitted, visitors will be shot, that sort of stuff. And I went into a porta cabin and asked a guy in there if I could possibly come and take some photographs of this marvelous place. And he said, why wouldn't I let you? And I tried to explain to him about health and safety in the UK. And, you know, if you ever try to take a photograph of a power station, you'll know that within 15 minutes, not only is security on you, but they're probably going to ring the police. Well, in this instance, the guy turned around to me and he said, can I just say something, David? He said, when you come back later on, I said, yeah. He said, don't crash into anything. Which I thought was utterly hilarious. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that you may already have the kit that will work, that will be able to get you exactly what it is that you need. And I'll just show you some other further adventures of stuff that I've done during this period. Some of the best night skies you can go to, of course, are desert locations. And this is light painting with a flat head torch. That's the Petzl head torch with really flat AAA batteries. And I'm off to the left-hand side of the picture, light painting the scene from the left. And it's just created this wonderful sense of dimension to all the rocks, which would literally just been all in silhouette, and the grass as well, and the sort of the grasses and the dirt in front that you can see there, the desert. So it was in other words, a bit of torchlight can just be everything you need to lift that picture out of the doldrums. The Milky Way is on a lovely angle as well. It's on a 45-degree angle, which is incredibly photogenic. And throughout the season, that angle will change. The position of it will change as well. And something to really consider as well, whenever you're doing all this sort of stuff, is that you have to do your research as to where the Milky Way and where the moon is going to be. There's no point arriving in a desert location and then finding that when you're there, it's going to be full moon throughout the whole time that you're on holiday there or traveling there. You want to get it so you're in darker skies, or darker skies going into a small amount of moonlight can be really good. So plan your trips around new moon and plan your trips around a rising moon that will create wonderful visual effects. And in this picture, this is everything together. This is a quarter moon, half moon going down behind this wonderful arch, rock arch in the USA. And over to the left-hand side here, we've got all the wondrous stars. And I've also light painted this from two separate angles. I've done it from here on the left-hand side, and I've gone in through the gap, round the side, and I've light painted the whole inside using the Astro setting. You'll notice a lot of head torches have got a red Astro setting as well. And they're remarkable because you can do fun things with different colors. And I've also got my friend Brian, who works for Nickelodeon with me, and he's down here on the right-hand side, and he's light painting everything from the right-hand side. I should do it that way, actually, from the right-hand side. And I'm concentrating on all the left. Was this easy? No. How long did it take? Probably about 15 attempts to get it right. So we got it exactly as we wanted it. It was not easy. I was controlling two cameras, Brian's camera, my camera, and we were just blasting away trying to get the best result we could of this. It's not comfortable. I'll tell you what isn't comfortable as well is getting up at 2 a.m. in the morning, climbing out of bed to go and do this. It's not easy. It's not comfortable in the slightest. But I always remember seeing on Banksy's Twitter page many years ago, it was like a circle and a big circle. And the little circle said, your comfort zone. And the big circle said, where the magic happens. And I think that that really does sum it up. You have to go and push it a lot further than you're comfortable doing a lot of the time to create these sorts of things. And often when you're there, you have to react spontaneously, because what you've gone to do, what you plan to do, actually doesn't work, and you need to do something different. So in this instance, using colors and all sorts of other stuff, we came up with some really, really fabulous effects that I was truly proud of. But if I just take you back to the UK, because it's very easy again just to keep mentioning everything is, everything beautiful far away. Have a look at this. This is a recent shot taken last year, and this is everything. This is I think it was a 1635 lens at 20 millimeters, 1635 3 Mark 3 or Mark 2, or not the Mark 1 though. I'd say definitely the Mark 2 or 3 are very, very good for night photography. The 3 being the best by far. The main thing here is that I've not been able to get an effect like an f16 depth of field effect here. So this is a combination of light painting and focus stacking to be able to get the picture to work correctly. So I've gone in and I've taken the first shot, and it's just literally been this area here, and the images are completely out of focus at the bottom, because what can you get at f2.8 20 millimeters in focus? Well, probably only this area here from about a third of the way to the stars and the rocks that you can see in the background there. And then when I've done, imagine it's like this. That's the amount of focus I've got for the top of the picture. And then I do another image here and another one here and another one. And notice I'm not like this. I'm actually trying to depict here an overlap. So in other words, you bring your focal point a little bit closer and it overlaps, and another overlap and another overlap. And you work your way all the way to the bottom. So about 9-10 images later at the very bottom, I got it in focus right to the tiniest of pebbles that are in the foreground there. I'd also put a head torch in my pocket and then literally just moved my jacket around like this, standing on the spot, because it was a light grey jacket. That was complete coincidence and luck that I had it. And that diffused the torchlight so that it wasn't just blasting hard shadows over the whole of the foreground. And I had to get consistency as well. So once I'd done all that and I'd assembled all these pictures in software, it was a case of tidying everything up. But if you've got consistency in lighting like this, then you're literally turning what would have just been a jet black beach, or certainly not very light at all. And it's completely new moon, no moonlight whatsoever. There's no ambient light coming from anywhere. In other words, this is in darkness, and the whole thing has been recreated with torches. It's not easy. It took about 45 minutes to capture all the images. I had to keep deleting stuff at the start because I wasn't happy with the way the light painting was going. And then when I got the technique right, then I just blasted through and managed to get all of the images to work. And then went over to that rock at the other side, the left one, and did this shot, which is infinitely better, I think. And this is one single picture that was taken using, again, 24-70 f2.8 Mark II, just one shot, Milky Way going up over the top of the picture here. And this is around about 11 o'clock at night, something like that. It says there it was actually 20 to 1 I took it, so it was later than that. So throughout the night, the Milky Way will start here at a nice 45 degrees, and it will do this and go up over the top and then disappear. So you'll never see it any further than that, because of course it gets too light. And if you're thinking, when do I go to see the Milky Way to get the really high quality Milky Way result? It's the summer months. So you need to be there in May. June is difficult because of course it's very very bright. So you don't only get a small window of maybe an hour and a half where it all works. And then into July and August, you can keep shooting a really good Milky Way. So May to August, I would say, is approximately right. And then it starts. The Milky Way will now drop below the horizon, and you won't see it anywhere near as good as it is. So going out at night time at the moment produces fantastic stars, but it also brings on its share of difficulties, because the fact being that the Milky Way that you'll see at the moment is just the tail end. Imagine our massive spinning galaxy. Well, these pictures are looking into the very center. And at the moment, on the edges of the Milky Way is the Milky Way that you will see certainly at this time of year. But, and this is an important thing, is that you'll see constellations. You'll see different stuff that you will not see in the summer. You get way longer to shoot as well. So it's a very, very active time of the year to be going out and shooting the Milky Way in general anyway. So don't be despondent with that. Right, finally, because we're going to do some architecture next, some shoot information for you so that you can, noctilucent clouds, I'll leave that on while I talk about this. Some shoot information for you. Firstly, shoot 24 millimeters as a wide angle. Don't go into 35 or 50 or anything like that, because as you go through longer focal lengths, all that happens is you draw star trails quicker and quicker. In other words, you have to shoot much higher ISOs for a much shorter time to be able to get this to work. So if we just said 24 millimeters, that will be the first thing I would recommend doing. Secondly, start with ISO 3200. That's a really good ISO to begin with. If your camera only does a comfortable 1600, then work with what you have. 1600 will be okay as well, but 3200 is a nice value, and most cameras these days can do it, even entry-level cameras. Now what you want to do is you want to set your white balance, and you want to set your white balance to 3200 ISO, 3200, 3000 K color temperature. Okay, then what you want to do is you want to make sure that your lens is in manual focus. You also want to make sure that your lens does not have image stabilization switched on. You then want to put the camera in manual mode. You don't want aperture priority or shutter priority. You want it in manual mode. You zoom in to a street light or a star or something on those lines to be able to get focused. You go into live view ×10 or similar, and you turn your focusing ring. And what will happen is, if the light you're looking at is out of focus, it will be a sphere like this. And then what happens is it shrinks down to nothing. And as you go past the infinity focus point, it will then open back up again to a circle. So you want to get it, of course, so it's an absolute pinprick, and that gives you your precise focus. You want to put on a 2-second timer. You want to shoot with mirror lockup if you're with a DSLR. If you're using a mirrorless camera, obviously you don't have to worry about that. But you want to get a 2-second timer on there as well. And your shutter speed needs to be 25 seconds for a 24 millimeter shot. And that should give you star trails, very tiny ones, but hardly noticeable, but give you enough time to get a lot of light into the camera overall again. So good luck. Choose something local. Don't go too far. Go with friends. Go with head torches. Try some light painting. Try going to a remote area and seeing if you can light paint some rocks or do something like that. Remember, if you're going to light paint anything, don't just stand behind the camera pressing the button and just doing this. It'll look like you pulled the car up to the rocks and left your lights on dim. You want to basically come right back from the subject, 2/3 sky, 1/3 ground, find a tree or something nice, or a monument maybe, or something, anything that you think will work, that's in an area that you can shoot without too much light pollution, and then go away from the camera, from the side, use the torch and illuminate the scene. And remember, you don't need one of these, 1500 lumen LED car headlight as bright as torches. Just subtle, and 10 seconds. Have a look at it, see what it looks like. Remember, you're going to be shooting again and again and again, because you're going to get the light painting right, or you're going to get the exposures correct. You'll have fun, and you'll come away with a big grin on your face, and especially when you get to look at your photographs the following day. Just don't go and shove them. Don't start really pushing the raws in software to pull all this detail out of shadows, and so that's daytime photography. This is something is totally different. You have to be very respectful to the fact that it's night. That's those are the conditions, and you have to work within the limits of those conditions. Okay, right. Let's flip over and let's go and have a look at some architecture. And I want to talk to you about some of the experiences I've had with the EOS R6. Now, this is a experience that I did over two separate visits, actually. One was in August, when we were allowed to be moving around again, of course, and the other one was in October half term. So not too long ago, about a month ago, that I did a majority of these images. I had two cameras. I used an M6 Mark II, and I also used a R6 with 2470 f4 IS, a 100 to 400 and a 16-35. There is no tilt shift photography in this particular shoot. And the reason why I did that was because for the same reasons, I didn't just want to produce a whole load of work with looks that other people cannot get. And what I wanted to make sure that we could do here was to be able to get relatable work. So I did all of this work using those 3 lenses. A lot of the more daytime images I did, like all these ones up here, were done with the M6 Mark II, which is no slouch by any means. And if you want a smaller pocket camera, when I say pocket, it's probably not a pocket camera, but a small footprint, very lightweight camera that's very high quality, 33, I think it is, megapixels. You can't go wrong with the M series cameras. They're really, really good. And I have this conversation with people on an irregular basis about mirrorless and about weight and camera weight and everything else. Go and take a 5D Mark IV, go and take a 100 to 400, go and take a 2470 and stick them on some scales, and you'll find that the whole lot weighs no more than 3.8 kilos. That's not very heavy. And you now have everything from 24 to 400 mil. Go and put a 1.4 converter in, and now you have everything from 24, pretty much. There's a little bit of a gap there between 70 and 100. 24 to 560 millimeters for 4 kilos. Put a lightweight bag with that as well and a few little bits you need, and you're into 5-6 kilos. This whole weight thing is not really carefully attributed. Many of the other lenses you get, for these other systems are also extremely heavy and very bulky. Very well made lenses, fantastic, but just as heavy. So I do urge you to go downstairs, get all your camera kit out and start weighing it. Put it in your kitchen scales and have a look at it all. You'll be surprised at how light certain bits of kit are. So let me just start. I'll go here. We'll do some stuff in Leadenhall. Now, Leadenhall is where all the lovely skyscrapers are. This is the Lloyd's building in the bottom left corner, you can see there. And also all these wonderful reflections that are happening in glass and steel. I wandered through here in the summer and thought, I have to come back and do this with some seriously good kit. Not knowing I was even going to get an R6 at the time on loan, and I was able to take some exceptionally nice photographs with both systems. The main thing about this is that super wide angle, even fisheye, can be so exciting in these sorts of environments, and it's literally a case of walking around and looking up a lot of the time. Now, the M series that I've been using, I paired it up with an old M series 90-degree viewfinder. Now, let's just imagine there's the camera. You're looking at it side on. The viewfinder slots into the hot shoe on the top, and it gives you a full 90 degrees, which means you can turn the camera this way. And that means that the lens is now pointing vertically upwards, and you're still looking through it like this. So it's viewing upwards, and it's such a remarkable thing. The new ones, the new viewfinders only go to 45 degrees, but can still be just as useful if you're looking up. It helps you take the complication out. But then, of course, you can do things like this with the mirrorless systems, of course, where you can use the rear flip-out screen, and you could take shots like this, which does exactly the same thing. So, in other words, what we're saying is there's all sorts of workarounds with all sorts of bits of kit. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. The main thing is to just get constructive, start looking at elements, and in this one we've got the gherkin and the cheese grater on the right and the Lloyd's on the left there, which all come together really quite well. So you're looking for long lens shots, you're looking for wide angle, you're looking to position yourself exactly in the middle of things. It doesn't matter. You're really looking to find out or to be able to compress things, so that you can create an unusual image from multiple buildings, or you can detail things, detail windows, detail abstract pictures. Anything that you think works really well is game, really. But to create more situational stuff, the vertical views are incredibly fun, and you get all sorts of really exciting work from those. Have a look at this, and this is taken with the R6. And it's at 16 millimeters, ISO 1600, f8, handheld for a quarter of a second. Now, let's just come to that a moment. The marvel of using lenses and an image stabilized sensor, it's just something else. The fact is, for me personally, this sort of system is going to become extremely useful in the future. because of travel photography, architecture photography, and also because of the fact being I do like to reduce I don't want people to really spot what I'm doing when I'm out taking these sorts of things. And if I just appear like a tourist, then all the better. So I was shooting up all this in all these in between all these tower blocks with this light you can see here looking straight down on me. It was quite intense, but I did manage to keep it all under control. And the idea then to get this sort of vortex of lines just sucking you into the very center. I tried all sorts of different things, and when I went out that particular night, I took no tripod, and I did this on purpose because what I wanted to do was test out just how good the camera was at photographing, you know, images that were sharp side to side using everything I possibly could. And this is another quarter of a second. This is ISO 1600, aperture is f11, and shutter speed was a quarter. Now you're probably thinking, why did you bother shooting that at f11? And the answer is I could have shot it at a smaller aperture, but what I really love about this is the starburst effect that's happening from the lights that are looking down on me here. Now, using the aperture stop down creates greater sort of needle-like effects from the lights. So this is a really good way of creating little starbursts. So I have to say again, the 16 to 35 f 2.83 has got remarkable starbursts. It's really good, a very detailed, very intricate sort of starburst effect that you'll get from lights. So that's something to really bear in mind. Wide angles and smaller apertures create these fabulous starburst effects. So in and around all of here, I'm not bothered by anybody from security. I had one guy come up to me and just say, if you are going to continue to take photos, would you just mind stepping off this property? And I said, okay, where is the property? And he said, well, it's here around this area where you're standing at the minute. He said, but anything in the road or the footpath, he said, it's fine. It's just, I have to tell you because it's private property. And I said, no, that's fine. And the thing is there's a lot of stuff online with people getting into these hostile arguments with security guards in central London. And, you know, the thing is that in the end, you know, most people, especially right now, are not up for fighting with you. But if you go in fighting, you're going to get hostility back. So really what you need to do is turn around and apologize, say you're sorry, and just move to an area that they're happy with you taking photographs. And this is a lot of what I end up doing a lot of the time, is having conversations with people and just saying to them, you know, oh, how's it going? And, you know, we must be pretty bored this evening, or, you know, or similar, I don't know, or just have conversations with people. And this really helps when it comes to the hostility or various other things. It's not like that really, and most people are very okay as long as you've got a big smile and, you know, you don't intend to give them any bother. This was the same shot that I showed you beforehand, very, very similar anyway, from the one I did in the summer, and I was trying to find this location, exactly the right position as to where I'd taken it before. And I really like this picture because of the lighting, etc. This is a 1/6 of a second handheld again, and you're seeing that they're all really good. They're really sharp pictures. How high can the camera's ISO go, by the way? That's another question that we could consider right now. Well, I personally believe that whenever you're dealing with cameras and looking at an ISO value, you really ought to consider 2 ISO maximums. Now, we're talking about a maximum ISO in the daytime and a maximum ISO at nighttime. This is because of the very nature of night photography, in the sense that all of the data is in the shadows end. Now, in a daytime composition where you've got a lot of light, it means that you won't see so much noise as you do, because noise is very prominent in the shadows end. So if all your image just contains shadows, then you're not going to see anything other than a more prominent noise, even though that's the same amount of noise it would be anyway, whether you were shooting in a bright environment or not. It's just in a bright environment, you don't see the shadows. Do you see what I mean? So I think that the R6 has a nighttime maximum of 12,800, which is incredibly impressive. It's much more comfortable, I have to say, at 6,400. 6,400 is very nice. It's a very clean looking 6,400, and it's a very clean 3,200 as well, which I think is a really high strength of that camera. So if you think about this, if you can push the ISO that far, it means that you can do more creative things with stopping stuff down. You could stop down to say f8 with ease. And with the image stabilization in the sensor and also in the lenses as well, the combination of the two means that you can take a lot greater risks than you would have been able to do, for example, with the 5D Mark IV. I mean, I went away to India with this 5D4 and this 24-70 lens. I think it was a loaned 24-70 lens at the time. And I was deeply regretting that I didn't have my f4 IS version. Obviously, there's no image stabilization in the body and there's no image stabilization in the lens. And I was thinking, well, 2.8, I can shoot a lot of interesting stuff with that. And I had a lot of missed shots because it has no image stabilization. So the fact that these wonderful cameras now have it in the body means you can even pick glass like my 24-70 there, which doesn't have image stabilization. And now you have image stabilization in the body, which is going to take this a lot further. 3-4 stops of IS from what's going on in the body itself. 8-15 fisheye, you can see here, playing around with this, absolutely fantastic fun, stretching all these tower blocks into different angles. It was really, really remarkable fun to do. And the more I kept shooting, the better everything got. I became more confident with what was happening as well. And this was literally the first decent shoot that I'd done with the R6, and I was really blown away by just how wonderful everything looked, how sharp everything was, and how much risk taking I could take. 1/8 of a second here again. You see, there's nothing under 1/10 of a second. That one's 1/6 of a second again. I have to give my wife the credit for this picture because she said, "Oh, you want to stand here? It looks really good with this concrete tube going up the side." And then there was this starburst that you can see happen on the little light there, which was really remarkable. And lots of similar pictures and similar compositions you can see as I've worked my way through these. Now let's have a look at some different styles of architectural photography as well, which will be really good. I blagged my way into lots of different spiral situations. In other words, staircases and going into hotels and all sorts of other things that were quite fun. I really do like these ones, for example. And this is a hotel called Citizen N, which is in the middle of it's just over the road from London Bridge, I think it is. Fabulous single, just one-story staircase. Really interesting, beautifully designed. I mean, intricate, very intricate woodwork that was created here. It's taken a long time to put together and assemble. It was really something. And those are lights in the middle, if you're wondering what's going on. They're just on the ceiling above. Wonderful sort of like mesh lights that are hanging from the top. It's really good. So again, how do you get this sort of image? Well, you go in and you wander in and explain that you've heard that there's a great staircase. Is it possible you could have take a photograph of it? Doing a bit of a project on creating some spirally images. Is that something that they'd allow you to do? Everybody says yes. They all say yes. If you're just meaning to, you're nice, you're just meaningful about what you're saying, everybody gives you access to these sorts of things. It's really good. And I went into another hotel, which is this is in the Premier Inn, Premier Inn in Bankside, and I was amazed by this as well. Just beautiful 7-story staircase out the back of a Premier Inn. Really incredible. Again, all handheld. 30th of a second this time, f8, 24mm, ISO 1600. Could shoot the camera all day at ISO 1600. It doesn't make any difference at all. There's hardly any noise in it at all at 1600. It's really, really good. It led me to, let's just go to more brutalist architecture. This is down at Canary Wharf, and there's a car park in Canary Wharf. I mean, absolutely mad thing. Pipe work and stains and just grim. And it was raining right onto the lens as well. I was standing in there looking up like this. We'd take a few shots, go through, look at the wall, and then find that it had all these little circles where light misty rain had hit the front of the lens. And eventually, after a number of different shots, managed to get this to work. But just watch, when you look at the top right, it goes all the way round and round and round, all the way into the center, right to the skylight that you can see at the top there, which, yeah, very unusual, very striking spiral indeed. So all of these, or most of them anyway, are all wider angles in that sense. But then there's some long lens stuff as well, which I really like, to give you some kind of idea. This is over in Docklands, and this wonderful modern architecture building to the right here is masking what is essentially a very large cable car tower, and the cars are going up like this to the tower and then going down the other side. And the Docklands cable car is a fantastic thing to do. If you've never done it before, you should go and do it. It's really good fun, and it creates some lovely images. In fact, I think I shot, where was it? No, this one here. That was taken from the cable car. It's through a bit of a mucky window. It's not the best of images for contrast and bite, but nonetheless, it's a lovely composition you can just get of the O2 as you go up. It lasts about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, I suppose, just the ride. It takes you all the way up to this tower and comes all the way down the other side, and you land on the other side of the river. But if you're prepared and you know what to do, it's really good. So that's a good tip. You can see there the wonders of Canary Wharf. In fact, let me take you to Canary Wharf from the wrong side. This is a panorama taken from the opposite side. In other words, the Thames has come along like this, down the other side, and along like that. But on this bit here, there's the view on the opposite side of the river looking back to the west side of Canary Wharf. And it's not that appealing because a lot of the nicer buildings are over the other side. And you can see that there's only a couple of large tower blocks that really make any dominance here. And then they block out the one with the triangular roof that I can't remember the name of, which is the key to the panorama, if you like. And if I take you to the next one, there we go. That's from the opposite side of Canary Wharf. It was really great fun. And I've also found with the R6 as well that the amount of push you can give to the shadows when you're dealing with a low to high ISO is really good. It's not questionable. It really does create very strong pictures, and I've pushed the shadows quite significantly in this shot to sort of add all that extra detail back in, pulling the highlights back so you can sort of squash the dynamic range of the picture into the very center. This is a vertical panorama, so it's taken like so, click, 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 going across probably about 10 images that have all been assembled in software when I've got back. For those of you who are interested in panoramas, you need, firstly, leveled legs. So make sure that if you buy a tripod and it doesn't have a spirit bubble level on it, or it hasn't got one that screws in underneath to the center column, then you're going to need one, or you're going to need something like that to be able to solve the problem, because those legs need to be completely level. Then what you do is you stick your ball head, tripod head, whichever, a three-way head on top. And what you then start to do is assemble the camera on top like this. Now, it means that if you dip the camera down or dip the camera up, it doesn't matter whichever way you're doing it. If you are doing a panorama, I should sort of be doing that really, but if you're doing a panorama like this, then you will get a very straight panorama. If you then try and put it into software where the tripod has not been level, in other words, it's been doing that, okay, that's a gross exaggeration, but you see what I'm saying, like that. Then the main thing is that you will end up with a curved panorama and you'll have to crop into it. Or if it's that way, I joke with everyone and say it's a banana-rama. And the thing is, you'll lose a lot of the integrity of the picture itself. So you need really good meticulous setup, and you also need some good software. And I'm going to give you a tip now to recommend PTGUI. PTGUI is my panorama software of choice, and it creates fabulous panoramas, like gives you way more controls than you could ever get from Photoshop or Lightroom, which will do an okay job. But it's a bit like, where are your images? They're here. Okay, would you like to load them into a panorama? Yes. I'll give you a couple of options. Okay, I'll choose the first one. Let's have auto, and then the next thing you know, there's your pano. Now imagine if you've got repeating things happening in the images by accident, or you've got strange blurring effects. Well, you can use PTGUI to ghost stuff out, so you can get rid of repeats or ghosts or all sorts of other things. You can also fix converging verticals of tower blocks. You can do all sorts of different things, from spherical panoramas to equirectangular to cylindrical, to all sorts. It's very, very powerful indeed, and also allows extensive exposure blending. So you could do a +2, 0, -2 exposure, 3 exposures for your first part, then move it across, +2, 0, -2, +2, 0, -2, and you could then exposure blend and stitch a panorama at the same time. It's unheard of. It's such a great piece of software. I recommend it thoroughly. PTGUI and PTGUI Pro, which is another really good one. May I take you in the final throws to this? This is a very known of composition and a very known place to go. This is Adams Plaza, which is a sort of like a, well, it's like a spaceship launch tunnel is the way I look at it. And it's very important when you're doing this to align everything correctly. And let me just bring you to a feature that pretty much all cameras have, but I want you to switch it on whenever you're doing architecture next time. And it's this. Inside your viewfinder, you will have a grid mode. Now, you've even got it on this one, the 5D Mark IV. It literally has an LCD overlay in the viewfinder. And the LCD overlay gives you a number of different options, and you can have 3x3, 6x4, and I think there's another one which has got diagonal lines, which I think is way too messy. It adds too much in. But let me firstly explain to you that don't use 3-3, which I think is more the common thing, because people think, oh, I'm going to put things on the rule of thirds. Well, with architecture, you mainly end up doing a lot of symmetry. Now, with the 6x4, what you get is 6 on the shortest edge there, and 4 on the shortest edge and 6 along the top, which gives you, very importantly, a center line and also another center line. So you do have a crosshair point right in the very center of the focus screen. And that's what I did here, was I used that on the M6 Mark II. Again, it has exactly the same features, and positioned this center point of the picture right in the middle of the crosshair. Then, because the lines emanate out from the crosshairs like this, you can see here, that's where the banisters are, left and right. They're bang in the middle. And also, it helps you align the ceiling. And if you look up and look down, you can see there that they are absolutely in the center. I have seen so many of this particular composition where people are just slightly out like that. And what happens? Well, the light's like this, instead of being dead true in the middle like that, it's slightly out, and then the reflections like that. So you end up with this effect. Do you see what I mean? And then if he'd actually centered it up properly, or whoever took it, it would do that. And if you go too far, it does that. Do you see what I mean? So you need to get this absolutely precise. And that grid mode inside all these modern cameras will help and assist you in precise composition. Look what they've done to it now. Oh, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And this is Camille Walala, who is a concept artist who wrapped the inside of this building in plastic. And it is just something else. I mean, I want to do a portraiture model shoot or something here. It would be really, really incredible. But it's so eye-catching now. Have a look at the variations I took on the theme as we go. There's a couple of guys walking through. I got his kick of his foot, you can see there, coming through the picture here, just at the right time. And I was just hovering over to the left to create a sort of rule of thirds, sort of really dynamic leading lines picture here. And I think I did another one afterwards where they weren't in the shot, just as they'd gone out of the picture. But the trying to get people in there was a bit difficult. And I remember I picked the camera up and I was way too fast at just assuming everything would focus and lock on, and I took a load of shots. And the first couple where these two friends were standing in the very center, their shadows were, you can see this sort of ripply shadow effect going up over the top. And I managed to get this lovely shot with the shadows going vertically upwards, and they were perfectly spaced either side. They didn't realize what was going on. And of course, they see me sitting in the middle, so they naturally start to veer right, which is what happened here. And I was really gutted that I just didn't get those ones in focus. Again, what are we shooting? F11 at a tenth of a second, ISO 800. Absolutely no problem for this camera. Now I've ducked right down. I'm kneeling down, looking up like that, and it's created this wonderful fanning effect of all of this going in each direction. It's really, really important that you vary your compositions as much as you possibly can. F11, 15th of a second, 40 millimeters, something like that. And then I've got these two guys walking down from the one end of the walkway again, and you can see what the effect I was trying to get here. Their shadows going up over the top. I'm almost considering going back and doing another shoot of this. I would really, really like to have another go at it. So to wrap up, to use that phrase, considering we were just looking at a wrap in that sense, I'll just flick through some of these, which were really great. So you don't need specialist lenses to go and shoot architecture. What you've got to do is come up with a lot of research. You've got to go and research what it is that you want to shoot. and you want to stay relatively light if you can as well. I took an R6, a 1635, a 2470, and 100 to 400, and I barely used the 100 to 400 at all. It was really the other two. So if you wanted to emit a 100 to 400, you could do exactly that, and it wouldn't be a problem. Now, what you also want to spend your time doing is research, but don't over-research, because one of the things about over-researching is that you will end up in a situation where you will do too much research and you will have a enviable collection of pictures on your phone, and every time you look at them, you'll be thinking, oh, well, I can't do that because it's grey and there's no sunrise, there's no sunset. It's never going to look like this. So just put yourself in the location, that's where you want to be, and give yourself a good idea of what it is that you want to do, and then start moving around the subject and becoming inspired. And one of the things I found, I'll just show you, this was inside a tower block in central London in King's Cross, actually, which is really quite amazing. But let me show you these ones, because I think I've taken something quite original here, which is this batch of abstracts that I did. This is in St. Paul's, and it's this wonderful set of what's called angel wings, which are this big sort of like steel vents that are used. I can't remember, it's something to do with N power or something like that. And I spent the time playing around with this to create this very, very strong set of abstract pictures that are all converted to black and white, besides one or two actually, which work really quite well in color. And again, if you just go with an idea and then let your eye get drawn to this. And also, it's very easy with architecture photography to think that everything has to be straight. The camera always has to be level. In these instances, the camera was on weird angles, really twisted round, as I was trying to get all these bizarre abstract pictures from this shoot. And I was really, really happy with the end result and what came back. That yellow you're seeing in the bottom there, or the orangey yellow, is actually from a street light that's up in the I think it's on the back of a big tower block, just pointed down into the scene. And the blue is created because I had to try and get the orange under control, so I set a custom white balance, a cooler white balance, and that then threw part of the picture into this sort of blue, whereas the other half of the picture was warmer. So it worked really well. But you can see, just by playing around with camera angles and variety, you can get something that really, really says something different. And look at its sort of stains, and there's all this sort of, grittiness to especially the edges where it's all been welded and stuff like that through here. It's a remarkable structure overall. It really, really is. And certainly worth playing around with and pursuing. Again, got buzzed by security, who then said, what are you doing? You're loitering more than any normal tourist would. And I said, that's because I'm not a normal tourist. I'm an architecture tourist, and I love architecture, and I really love this sort of work. We had a reasonable conversation, and off the bloke went, and I just carried on and then finished up. So don't concern yourself too greatly with having to have technical lenses in that sense. They're not actually as necessary as you might think. What it is about having an idea and some perspective, and for you to then to be able to go out and execute that perspective. Think not only perfect symmetry, think 45 degrees. Come in at 45 degrees and look at your subject and see how it looks then, because it will have density and perspective that it wouldn't have had when you were looking straight on at it. Then think about also looking upwards. Go to churches, go to cathedrals, go to abstract architecture that you can find. Go on the underground. Do anything that you possibly think could work in central London to be able to get this to push forwards. And you'll start to get it all to come together, and it will make remarkable images the longer that you actually spend, the more time that you spend doing this and learning your craft. I remember when I started going abroad, I realized that I'd spent so much time shooting architecture and landscapes that all of a sudden, when I went away, I was now instantly a travel photographer. How fun was that? I didn't even think about it. But landscapes and architecture in foreign countries equals travel photography. So you're literally 80% of the way there. It's a remarkable thing. And yes, I just want you to go and enjoy it. So in total, R6, that's an R5, but an R6, incredible piece of kit for doing this sort of work because of all of its stabilization functions. And it is no slouch. And don't think 20 megapixels is not great. Most people don't want to shoot anything other than A2 at the very most, and it'll easily do A2. A2 is the limit of printing that you could do with a 20 megapixel camera. But just think of it that way, which is that the megapixels are, I'd rather have a lower megapixel, higher ISO camera than the other way around by any means. It's vitally important for me to get the right tool for the right job. And that's why Cambrian are here to sell you the right tool for the right job when necessary. But I hope that this has inspired you as well to really think about things and to think about what you can do with your photography, not only in the landscape, not only at night time, but also for architecture as well. And I'm wondering, I don't have to add you guys in, do I? Or do you add yourselves in? Oh, I think you're unmuted. No,
We're all sorted. I'm here. Paul has to sort. Oh, there you go. Paul's sorted.
There we go. I forgot to push the button. Oh no, that was brilliant, inspirational, fantastic. Really enjoyed that, and yeah, almost a 2-for-1 there because we had some amazing astronomy shots there and the architecture stuff as well. So, and you can see your enthusiasm coming through on both parts there as well. So,
I greatly enjoy all of it. For the last 10 years of my travels, I have sought out all sorts of architecture and all sorts of landscape opportunities. But because the technology is now so good with these cameras, the opportunities are opening up even more and more. And for example, probably the only area of photography that I don't do is wildlife. And the only reason I don't do wildlife is because you need very exquisite glass, you need lightning fast reactions and dedication all the time. But now all of a sudden, because of all the face tracking, the animal face tracking, for example, I was at the top of Glastonbury Tor and this crow was just sitting there bobbing its head up and down, and I put this face tracking thing on and this bracket just locked itself onto the crow's head and was moving up and down as it was pecking like this. And then the crow took off into the air, it got pulled backwards by the wind, and I shot about 3 pictures as it went, and everything was sharp. It was incredible. So I might have a go at wildlife next. I don't know, but
yeah, no, definitely.
I also don't even own a camera, so I don't have an R5 or an R6, so they're just loaned ones. But I'd really like to give it a go at some stage. But yes, I have to go and have a look at the pennies that are in the bank at the moment.
No, definitely. So we are taking questions for David. So if anyone's got any questions for David, pop them into the comments, and we can quickly get to them. Do you think that technology that's sort of has been coming out has opened up the creative side of things for, you know, the type of stuff that you shoot? Oh yes, very much so. I think that the years ago, let's say for example 10 years ago or more, the incremental upgrades, 5D1, 5D2. I mean, well, that wasn't an incremental upgrade. That was a game-changing, world-altering upgrade, wasn't it? Suddenly, people were shooting TV series on a 5D Mark II with a 1920 HD video. I mean, incredible. But if we move that aside, the fact is that every upgrade that it gave us was usually quite large. And then what happens in the last few years or so much, the upgrades have been less incremental as the bottleneck has widened and widened of the abilities of these cameras. And the biggest problem that we were chasing for so long was ISO performance, wasn't it? Yeah. The fact now that we've just got, you know, I mean, everything that's entry level can shoot 800, 1600 ISO pretty much without a bother. I mean, your phone can do that without a bother now as well.
It's mad.
But the fact is that the technology is giving us more options and giving us more access. And the thing is that because now there's never been a better time to be taking photos because the technology is so good, then it means that all of these avenues, whether they are high quality landscapes, like we said, or indeed look at Astro. I mean, Astro was an elitist thing that you could never ever do unless you put your camera onto, you know, a tracking mount and you had a friend who had a a large shed in the desert or something, you know, it would be impossible to be able to do that. But now the fact that everybody can go out and shoot landscapes that contain a level of night photography is what really makes this so exciting. So there's no excuses now, none. Get out there and do it. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I think the most thing that I've certainly taken away from this, and hopefully our viewers as well, is that it's actually just to get out there and you know, experiment, enjoy. I mean, even the shots that you did within that fantastic tunnel, you know, we saw probably about 10 images there. You know, literally standing virtually in the same place, just slightly shifting from side to side, and the amount of different types of shots you can get just from experimenting and playing about with like composition and different angle of view is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I always explain to people when I do photography workshops that the tripod is there to support your idea. It's not there to support your camera. Well, it is, but you need to see what I'm saying. Primarily, it's there to support your idea. And if you grab the camera and look through it and then go, oh, hang on a minute, if I go back a bit, if I go wider, if I drop down, if I go in, if I tilt the camera, that's like 5 decisions that you've made before you're then going, right, I need my tripod, where's that? You know, and then to set it up. You've taken all those decisions. The mistakes I see all the time are quite simply this, which is, I wish to take a picture. Where's my tripod? Tripod out, tripod at a nice height, stick the camera on, nice working height. I can press the buttons and see everything clearly and look through. And then you're there sort of zooming around, trying to make pictures crash into the camera. It doesn't work like that. It never works like that. It has to be that you move around, you refine the ideas, you make mistakes, you change position, you sketch, take a photograph. Doesn't matter if it's even going to be soft. Does it look all right? Yeah, I could do with being back a bit, probably, you know, etc. Make all these decisions, and then the support will come in, and you'll end up with pictures that are far better thought out. They'll be far easier to attain as well. You'll be working for less time and moving on to the next part of your shoot list that you've got, for example, on a city shoot, or you know, like, I mean, a lot of the night photography stuff was just really going there and then wandering around and going, wow, what's that tower over there? And the next thing you know, you're running over and suddenly you see the lighthouse spinning around and it's lighting and illuminating the ground, and you're scratching your head as how are you going to do it, and it'll throw you off totally into a different angle. But even down to the meticulous setup and the complexity of the astro tracked images, you know, that's a lot of work to, you know, you hear, oh, I have to do this and then I can come away with this and then I'll have my magic picture. Well, it doesn't work like that, because you go away, you take photographs, you make mistakes, you have to go back, and then it's cloudy and all these sorts of other things that go on. So there's so many days that things go on that don't actually, you know, bring me to the right result. It's just that all of that knowledge, in other words, it's like playing scales on the banjo. It's like playing on the piano. Is that all that work will bring you to get to that location and then to operate at optimum brain, optimum ideas, everything, and it'll all come together if you do your practice and you research your ideas. It's very important stuff. So but yeah, I make lots of mistakes, you know, it's the way it goes, and I learn about things as I go as well. So, you know, it's just part of the course really, but it's great fun. And I personally feel that I'm sure everybody can do that if they just spend a bit more time researching and a bit more time moving the camera around the subject to make all those decisions. You'll get far better, higher quality work faster than you can think in that sense.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Joel, I think it's time to maybe have a look at some of the comments that we've had coming in.
So we've got a few thank yous, which is great. Thank you, David, for inspiring talk.
You're most welcome.
And thanks a lot, David. Plenty of inspiring ideas to go out and take more photos. A few thumbs up as well. Favorite place to photograph architecture?
Favorite place to photograph architecture? I have to say that probably one of my favorite places has to be Chicago. Yep. Chicago is a pretty safe place to go as well, as long as you don't go north or south. But in central downtown Chicago, it's incredibly safe, and it has some really inspirational stuff. It's got huge buildings and remarkable access to a lot of high viewpoints, and also there's it doesn't really matter what the weather is. I mean, I've been to Chicago only the once, and I went with it was an M3. Again, only because it's the one that I own, an M3. I used a film camera, an old 1975, I think it was a Mamiya C330, which is one of the twin lens reflexes.
Nice.
I shot loads of street portraits with it, and a 5D4. And I would bring the 5D4 out in the morning and the evenings, but I would drop it back at the hotel, which we chose a centrally located hotel, and then essentially shot the smaller camera and the film camera pretty much all day. And I would shoot street portraits of people, and an English accent and a 1970s camera is a great way of gaining access to smiling American people.
Definitely.
And then and wandering around on looking at all the fantastic you've got beautiful cityscapes, and you can choose, because the city is so huge, and when you come in on a plane and land in O'Hare Airport, it's like looking at a circuit board. I came in the first time and it was foggy as well, and it looked like Blade Runner. It was absolutely unbelievable. And when you actually wander the streets as well, there's a lot of amazing viewpoints that you can take photos of in the central business districts and stuff like that. So yeah, for Chicago has a combination of historical and modern architecture. It has glass and steel business districts and abstract, and it also has some of the most wonderful, easy access to all of this stuff. That doesn't mean, that it's, you've got to pay to go in everywhere. It's not. There's a lot of really wonderful stuff there. So, yeah, definitely Chicago.
No, it's brilliant.
Did you ever have Giordano's pizza?
I didn't. Oh, did we? I got a feeling we might have done, actually. I've
never seen so much cheese on one pizza. It was immense.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. Actually, I think isn't that like a guidebook must do?
It's like a quiche, but as a pizza. It's no wonder they call them pizza pies. It was like this thick with cheese. It was amazing. Paul's like, "Ooh, cheese."
Fantastic.
So thank you to John Smith. He says he circulated the email to the Real Photographic Society membership. Sue is asking, does the battery for the R6 last well?
Yes, they don't go flat very quickly. They come with a higher powered battery. It's you can tell when you've got a high powered R series battery, because now they've got a little gold seal on them. How wonderful is that? Very bling. But they
like a Sony battery.
Yeah.
They do.
Sounds like 20 quid that.
Yeah. It does.
Added onto the price.
Yeah.
They do take the standard Canon I think what are they called again? It's a LP6. Yeah, LPE6 batteries. This one is a 2000 milliamp hour one, so 2130. In comparison to the other ones, so they are pretty pokey. I mean, I would shoot one of these in a day, pretty much. I mean, it's not very much when you consider it. The first thing is, as well, is that depending on how you're shooting, and whether you're just standing there for ages, just endlessly with the rear screen on, that's obviously going to drop it significantly. But most of the time, no, it's really very good. And I mean, if I have to say, because I've got this one here as well, the 5D4, for example, as well. I mean, this is no slouch. Like, please get this into your head right from the word go, that this camera is no slouch. It's still very, very good, even though it's like 4 years old now, 3 years old. It's still an exceptional piece of kit. And if you wanted a camera with a mirror and you're happy with mirrors, then this is really very good still. And but this has got so many additional. I would say this is like a smart camera. It's like got so many additional features and things on it that make it really, really good. And I'm even yet to get exploring R5 video, mainly because I can't open it.
Yeah.
It's so flipping big.
Yeah, it's massive.
And this is another thing. Just to say about computers and the cameras, they're completely fine. I mean, all the latest versions of software will open all of the R5, R6 images as well. I've had no problem with the transition to shooting the R5 or the R6 in the setup that I've got here. And I've only got a 5-year-old MacBook, dual monitor setup and a few other bits, but there's no issues at all with it. I don't need modern, latest of the greatest, laptop technology or desktop technology. So it's very, very good. and they're a joy to use. They're very fast and very responsive cameras as well. I've been really highly impressed, and I've managed to break my world record, which was 24:105 in a forest. I managed to do a 35mm shot for half a second handheld.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
and although that's a bit digitally bicep flexing, the fact is what I'm trying to say is that it's the fact that the camera is extremely capable and can, in a travel photography, in a, imagine if you're a documentary or news photographer or something like that, the things that this can do are so good, from face tracking to the tandem of image stabilized lenses and sensor. Remarkable piece of kit.
No, that's brilliant.
Really cool. And Steve says, absolutely brilliant, David. I love both aspects of your work. Never really explored Astro, so now we'll give it a go. Wonderful architecture too.
Thank you very much.
Kevin says, inspirational talk. Thank you. And Rob Joseph says, could I ask if you can fit a tilt shift lens onto an L mount Leica?
Onto an L mount Leica?
I'm sure you
get
can.
The adapter for it.
It would just be an adapter, I'd have thought.
Yeah.
Firstly, you can, with the adapters, the really important thing to think about with adapters is this, which is you can go and buy 10 to 15 pound adapters quite easily. You can buy them on places like eBay, or if you just Google like camera adapters, you can find loads of companies that just sell lots of cheap, almost aluminium, just printed adapters. The biggest problem is when it comes to, firstly, you lose all autofocus, so there'll be no autofocus if the Leica does have it in that sense and isn't just manual. But the main thing is as well is that you'll find that the autofocus that the focusing will actually be in a different place. So, for example, if you have a lens scale, I'm just going back to the good old days of lens scales. Imagine that with it set to, if you can just about see that, that's set to infinity there at the moment. But you might find your lens scale moves to somewhere like that, and that's to do with the thickness of the adapter. And the adapter it often pushes the lens too far away. So you may find that things don't work in the way that you expect, or don't work as I know a lot of Leicas also have if you take the what's it called, where you've got like two windows, haven't you? And it
rangefinder.
The rangefinder type,
blurred image sort of like overlap thing. I don't know if it will work all correctly enough. But
I suspect it's a more modern one if it's got the L mount.
Right.
That's the partnership with Sigma, Leica, and Panasonic.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, in theory, yes, Rob. It's just obviously the flange distance will be one thing, and then the quality of the mount. But I suspect there's definitely a company somewhere that's created that.
That's going to do it. Yeah.
And if they haven't yet, they probably will do in the future. So.
Yeah.
Sue is asking, how big are the files for the R6, and do you need a super fast card?
No, you don't need a super fast card because I don't own one. I've just got the standard. I think like 90 megabytes a second ones. Things like I've tried to reduce down the size of the cards as well. I only like really having 16 gigabyte cards, which is very small. But the reason why is because I pretty much download the stuff off the card every day I shoot, so I'm not too worried about that. You can see if you can't see anymore, but if you were looking at the files, I think that each one of the R6 files are 120 megabytes as TIFFs. So when it comes to the RAWs, they're only about 40, I think, 45 megabytes. 45, megabytes. That's what I'm saying. I was thinking of something else there. So they're not too large. The R5 is a completely different matter. I mean, the R5 images, just quickly looking on here at the moment, looking at my computer, each TIFF is nearly 270 megabytes, so it's huge. It's 8,192 on the long edge, so it produces very large images indeed, which can be a little bit taxing on computers depending on what level of computer that you've got. But I mean, like I said, I've got a 5-year-old MacBook and it works perfectly fine with all of it. It doesn't really have a problem at all. It was a pokey one. It was like a 2.7 gigahertz quad core. But it opens everything fine. So anything within the last few years really is going to probably be totally okay. But no, you don't need these compact flash express cards, I think they're called, or something like that, for the
CF Express. Yeah,
CF Express. They're also a totally different size, and it reduces you down to one card. You can see there's the CF Express, the bigger one, and then there's the SD on the other side. So you need a CF Express card, and they aren't cheap by any means. So if you only shot normal cards, then you're going to find straight away that you'll only be able to shoot the one card unless you buy a CF Express. So it does produce its little complexities, whereas the R6 has dual SDs. And I really like SDs because I don't have to bother with card readers and just plug it straight into the computer. So
it's definitely a win with laptops and Macs that will take the SD straight away. And David
talking
Yeoman,
about wins,
David Yeoman, you are
win.
so right. I should have remembered the MC21, which is similar to the MC11, which will allow you to have a EF mount to an L mount, because they created that as part of the partnership, which is great. So I use a MC11 on my A7 III. Yeah, no, it's really good. Fantastic bit of kit from Sigma. Thank you, David. Can always rely on you.
You are most welcome.
And David Yeoman hasn't told us we're wrong yet, Paul, which is fantastic.
Well, technically we weren't wrong. I mean, if we said there wasn't an adapter, he would have the option to come in there. So we might be learning from our mistakes. So,
yeah, exactly.
No, that was lovely. I think that's everything in the comments that we've gone through. So thank you everyone for placing in the comments.
Massive thank you to David.
For David coming in and sort of helping us inspire to go out and take some pictures.
Banjo outro.
And I was hoping this as well. So normally what we do is we say to everyone that's done speakers is that we'll just move you out of the way for a second and we'll intro you out. But I think for this special occasion we're going to keep David in and he's going to play us out. So just before we hear a nice little jingle from David, I just want to remind everyone that you can see all of the videos that we are doing live on our website, which is cambrianphoto.co.uk. You can see all the past videos and you can rewatch them, and you can schedule the live upcoming videos so you get notifications on when we are going live. You can also like and share this video and share with all your friends. Make sure you go onto our Facebook and YouTube channels and hit subscribe and hit the notifications so you know when we're going live as well. And I think we'll leave it there and we'll hear from David on the way out. Thank you, everyone.
I've got a Patreon page, by the way, David Clapp. Just type Patreon, David Clapp. If you like high quality tuition, if you like high quality articles, if you like Zoom talks, similar to what we've done today, or all sorts of other things, I've basically made a subscription-based like social media platform. Patreon, like patreon.com/David Clapp. Where I'll even teach you how to play banjo at some point, maybe later.
Brilliant.
See you later, guys.
Bye.